What's going on, guys? Sean Nalawani, SeanNal.com, RealScienceAthletics.com, and in this video today I want to talk about the issue of hunger during a fat loss phase, and basically just address the fact that yes, it is normal to feel hungry to a certain degree while you're in a cutting phase and you're trying to lean down. Okay, in order to lose body fat, you need to be eating in a calorie deficit where you're consistently burning more calories than you consume. There's no way around that. And when you do eat in a calorie deficit over an extended period of time, your body is naturally going to send out hunger signals to some degree to try to motivate you to eat, and you are going to experience increased cravings that you're going to have to deal with and manage throughout the process. And I know this sounds pretty simple on the surface, but the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think for beginners out there who are carrying excess fat and are trying to lean down, or those who might be finishing up their first focused bulk and who are going to be doing their first cutting phase, it's really important to understand this and accept beforehand that it is a natural part of the process. I think some people tend to get misled by certain content they might see on YouTube or on Instagram, where fat loss is basically portrayed as being easy as long as you follow that specific person's dietary approach, or you buy their program or their supplements or whatever else. If you just use intermittent fasting and drink coffee, then fat loss is going to be an effortless process. Or if you follow a ketogenic diet or use carb backloading or some specific macronutrient breakdown, then you can lose fat and build the body of your dreams without ever feeling any cravings at all. And while that is very marketable and it sounds great on paper, it sells programs really well, it's just not the reality of how things actually work in the real world. Now, I'm definitely not saying you have to starve yourself or that you have to experience huge amounts of hunger just to lose some body fat. That's definitely not the case. And yes, there are several strategies you can use to minimize that hunger as much as possible. And yes, there will be individual variation at play as well. But regardless of any of that, the fact remains that some degree of background hunger during certain periods of the day, some degree of increased cravings and desires for certain foods that you'll have to learn to keep under control, some degree of energy loss as you maintain your deficit and drop your body fat lower and lower is normal, and it is to be expected. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It's just a natural byproduct of consuming fewer calories than your body requires to maintain its current weight. I mean, if you're someone who's overweight, then you have to think about how you gained that fat in the first place. The reason you gained body fat is because you were eating in an ultimately unnecessary calorie surplus over an extended period of time, long enough that that fat was able to accumulate. You were consuming more calories than your body required. You were probably indulging in a higher amount of good tasting but higher calorie foods, and you probably weren't exercising on a consistent basis either. That's how people get out of shape to begin with. So this idea that someone is going to get out of shape through overeating and through under-exercising, but then getting back into shape is going to be this easy, effortless process, that's just not realistic. It's not how things actually work in the real world. If you've allowed yourself to go too far in one direction through what you might call comfortable habits, then if you want to pull yourself back in the opposite direction, it's going to involve some discomfort. There's a certain price that has to be paid to undo the damage, so to speak. And if that wasn't true, then everyone out there would have a lean and impressive body, and everyone who started out on a fat loss program would see it all the way through to the end, which is obviously not the case. Now again, the degree of hunger that's involved during a cutting phase is going to vary from person to person. It depends on your current body fat percentage, it depends on how lean you're ultimately trying to get, and it depends on the size of the deficit that you're using and whether you'd rather lose fat more slowly with a smaller deficit but be less hungry throughout the process, or just tough it out with a bigger deficit in order to lose fat faster. It definitely shouldn't be your goal to make yourself hungry, and you might feel completely fine during the initial stages of your cut, but as time goes on and as you get leaner and leaner, your body will make certain hormonal adjustments and those cravings will start to kick in more strongly. Now, eventually, once you've dropped your desired amount of body fat and you're able to raise your calories back up and go back to eating at maintenance, then the hunger will subside, hormone levels will rebalance, and you'll go back to feeling normal again. This isn't a permanent thing, but it's just something you'll have to deal with throughout the actual fat burning process. And this is why having a properly structured plan is so important, because what you need to do is stack the odds as much in your favor as possible and get your appetite as under control as you can. Now, these are things I've talked about before, but I'll just give you some quick tips here before I close the video out. Number one, and probably the most important, is to work on maximizing your total food volume relative to the number of calories. So you want to focus on eating a mostly whole food, minimally processed diet, and base it around foods that are as non-calorie dense as possible. And increasing your vegetable intake is a great way to do this. That's going to allow you to physically fill yourself up as much as possible while still staying within your caloric limits. And drinking plenty of water throughout the day can also help you fill yourself up a bit more on top of that as well. Also, make sure you're getting enough protein because it's the most satiating of the 3 macronutrients, so at least 0.8 grams per pound of body weight daily. In terms of your diet as a whole, if you do have issues sticking to your cutting plan because of that increased hunger, then don't use too large of a calorie deficit. So anywhere between about 300 to 500 calories below maintenance is usually going to be a good figure to aim for. That'll be large enough to produce significant fat loss from week to week, but small enough to help keep your appetite moderated. In addition to that, you can also experiment with different daily meal frequencies and layouts. So some people do well with larger meals eaten less frequently. Some people prefer smaller meals more frequently, and some people get really good results by pushing their first meal to later in the day, like with intermittent fasting. But this is a really individual thing, so you'll need to play around a bit and experiment to see what works best for you. On the training side of things, I'd also recommend not going overboard on cardio. There are some people who actually do better with higher cardio volumes, and they prefer to burn more calories through exercise and then eat a bit more as a result of that. But in my experience, large amounts of cardio usually causes a net increase in appetite overall, and it makes it harder to not overeat. So I'd say to start off with no more than 3 cardio sessions per week, and only increase that later on if you really need to, if your fat loss has stalled once you're deeper into a cutting phase. Another thing that helps is getting enough sleep each night, because when you're sleep deprived, your body releases lower amounts of leptin and higher amounts of ghrelin, which are 2 hormones that regulate appetite. So definitely get your sleep dialed in. And one last quick tip is to slow down when you eat. Just a really simple thing, but that can help you feel a bit more satisfied off of a slightly smaller amount of food. So I'll leave it there, guys. Definitely employ those tips I just mentioned because they can make a big difference in terms of minimizing hunger. But at the same time, recognize that some degree of hunger is still inevitable. Usually it can't be eliminated fully, and it's just something you'll have to deal with if you're really serious about losing a significant amount of fat over the long term. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this advice was helpful today. If you want to get a complete step-by-step roadmap that covers all aspects of proper nutrition for losing fat and building muscle, along with fully structured training and supplementation plans as well to fully maximize your progress, then you can grab my complete body transformation blueprint program by clicking up at the top of the screen or visiting btblueprint.com. For those who are new to the channel, my brand new science-based pre-workout fish oil and multivitamin are also now available over at REALSCIENCEathletics.com. The link is in the description, and make sure to hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe below if you haven't already to stay up to date on future videos. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.